Please remain standing for the invocations led by Elder Mary Corshane, followed by Reverend Tanis Kalistnik.
Good afternoon, everyone. Wabino awan hikoendishnikas makwandotem. It is such a great honor for me and a humbling one to be able to say a few words in my language. Thank you, gratitude, blessing. Before I do that, I just want to say about what I'm wearing today. I'm wearing an orange shirt to honor all of us who went to residential school, where I spent 12 years, 10 years in one school and 2 more years in another school to complete my high school education. And why I'm going to say this in my language is because I can. There was a time when I didn't. There was a time when my voice was quiet. But now I don't have to do that. And it gives me great honor and just humbled to be able to stand here and say a few words in my language. And it's basically a language, a prayer that my dad taught me before I went to residential school. And my dad used to say this: thank you to the Creator for life. Thank you to the Creator for giving me another day to walk His beautiful earth. I also I also pray that I will walk softly on the earth. I never knew what that meant, the walk softly. It wasn't until many years later that I found out through my own research what that meant. So that's what my prayer will be, and it is especially fitting in this day and age where we know that it's imperative that we walk softly because of what extremes that are going on in our world today. And I just want to say again, Dr. Jane Goodall, I've seen some of the movies and read a couple of it and watched documentaries on TV. So I'm very, very humbled. Miigwech. Agjevanito, wabino awaniko endeshnikas makwandotem. Jemanito akawe ngaikit. Miigwech, mino bimati si wenonja. Miigwech ka indikit. Abiting mino emijiang, umaking chipmusayang. Jemanito baksenda amendash. Anegach chipmusayang. Nasine anegach chipmusayang. Og jemanito ngitimagi semendash. Mitashwe Anje anamyang, wewene china kamegisyang, wewene chidotamang. Gitimagisiang dash kshemanito, gitimagen mishnam, gitimagen mishnam, gitimagen mishnam, gitimagen mishnam. Kichimigwech. Thank you.
Let us continue in prayer. Creator God, we give you thanks for this day, and we ask you to bless this day of celebration. The work of Dr. Jane Goodall is known all over your world. She is a shining example of a lifetime of dedication and hard work, a woman of distinction in science, conservation, and humanitarian issues. We give thanks for her friendship to the University of Winnipeg. We both believe that it is through education we will ensure a better and brighter future for all people, animals, and the environment. Help us to foster respect and compassion for all living things, and to promote understanding of all cultures and beliefs. We humbly ask you to continue to protect her and guide her in the days to come. Thank you for this day. Amen.
Thank you. Please be seated. We'll take a moment if there are any latecomers. It is now my pleasure to invite forward Dr. Annette Trimby, President and Vice Chancellor of the University of Winnipeg.
Good afternoon. Thank you, Elder Mary Courchain. I know you're off to visit a school. Thank you for joining us today for this very special convocation. I welcome you to the University of Winnipeg, which is proudly located on Treaty 1 land in the heart of the Métis Nation. I always begin with the significant acknowledgement to recognize the land we inhabit, our respect of its history, and our commitment to embrace and educate all who join us in this special place. It is my pleasure to preside over today's ceremony. Chancellor Silver, distinguished guests, and friends of the University of Winnipeg, I have the honor to declare open this 110th Convocation of the University of Winnipeg, a special convocation ceremony in honor of Dr. Jane Goodall. We are pleased to be joined this afternoon by a number of distinguished platform guests, which I will introduce to you. I ask that each person stand briefly as I call his or her name and request that you hold your applause until I have finished the introductions. In the back row, we have Dr. Jens Frank, Acting Associate Dean of Science, Dr. Doug Goltz, Acting Dean of Science, Dr. Jan Stewart, Acting Dean of the Gupta Faculty of Kinesiology, Dr. Glenn Moulazon, Dean of Arts, Chris Miniker, Senior Executive Officer, Dr. Mavis Reimer, Dean of Graduate Studies, Dr. Sylvie Albert, Dean of Business and Economics, Dr. Catherine Taylor, Associate Dean of Arts, Robert Bend, Dean of the Collegiate, Laura Geringer, President of the University of Winnipeg Students Association. And in the front row, we have Sherman Kreiner, Managing Director, University of Winnipeg Community Renewal Corporation, Mike Emsley, Vice President, Finance and Administration, Laurel Repsky, Vice President, Human Resources, Audit and Sustainability, Dr. James Curry, Acting Provost and Vice President Academic, Bob Silver, Chancellor of the University of Winnipeg, Dr. Jane Goodall, Honorary Doctorate of Laws candidate, Dr. Carlos Colorado, Chair and Associate Professor, Religion and Culture, and Chair of the Jane Goodall Institute Board in Canada, Reverend Tanis Kalisnik, Student Life Academic Advisor, and Colin Russell, Registrar. We are also joined by members of our Board of Regents, nominators of our honorary degree candidate, faculty, staff, administration, students, and alumni who are here today to share in this celebration and who play essential roles in making this university the truly extraordinary and vibrant place that it is. I ask you to join me in thanking them as well. The University of Winnipeg has a long history of holding special convocation ceremonies. We use these ceremonies to honor extraordinary individuals, those who have made outstanding contributions to their field of study, profession, or to society at large. Past recipients honored through special convocations have included the former President of Ukraine, Viktor Yushchenko, former President of Peru, Alejandro Toledo, retired General Romeo Dallaire, human rights advocate Dr. Denis Mukwege, and singer, philanthropist, and humanitarian Chantal Kriavasuk. Today we honor Jane Goodall with an Honorary Doctor of Laws. An honorary degree is the highest academic status that can be bestowed on any individual. Those who receive an honorary degree demonstrate dedication and excellence in their field of work and have been nominated for consideration of this title. It is now my pleasure to call upon our esteemed Chancellor, Mr. Robert Silver, to confer special honors on Jane Goodall. She will be introduced by Dr. Carlos Colorado. Chancellor Jane and Dr. Colorado, would you please come forward?
Mr. Chancellor, I have the tremendous honor to present Jane Goodall to receive the degree of an Honorary Doctorate of Laws. Dr. Jane Goodall is a world-renowned pioneer in primatological research. Her findings in the 1960s at what is now the Gombe Stream Research Center have changed the ways we understand chimpanzees and primates more broadly, and how we think about tool use within the animal kingdom. Goodall broke new ground for women in science. In the 1960s, her field of study tended to marginalize women, but the influence of Goodall's research has served to erode some of those obstacles that women have historically faced. Dr. Goodall has trailblazed a path for other female primatologists who are today leaders in long-term primate behavioral studies worldwide. Goodall is a longtime advocate of Indigenous rights and knowledge. She is the United Nations Messenger of Peace and Dame of the British Empire. She is a past recipient of the coveted Kyoto Prize for her contributions to the biological sciences and dozens of other prestigious awards and recognitions. She has authored more than 20 books and been featured in many feature films. Dr. Goodall's legacy includes a global network of Jane Goodall Institutes and their many programs. I have personally served on the board of the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada since 2015. In that role, I have come to appreciate more fully how the global impact of the Jane Goodall Institute network is as much a core part of her legacy as her foundational work at Gombe. Goodall's vision for sustainable living, which is founded on a symbiotic relationship between humans, non-human animals, and the rest of the natural world. Her work is an inspiration to people across the planet. The Jane Goodall Institute protects great apes through sanctuaries, protects animal and human habitats through community-centered conservation, and educates and mobilizes students through the Roots and Shoots program. She has dedicated the most recent decades of her life to activism on behalf of animals, people, and the environment, traveling the world 300 days per year to deliver her inspirational message of hope. In September 2015, Dr. Goodall was the second lecturer in the Axworthy Distinguished Lecture Series on Social Justice and the Public Good at the University of Winnipeg. She delivered a powerful and moving address to a gathering of 2,500 people. Her lifelong commitment to sustainable living, conservation, and to animal and human rights is simply unsurpassed. Mr. Chancellor, I request that you confer upon Jane Goodall the degree of Honorary Doctor of Laws in recognition of her foundational contributions to science, especially primatology, and her untiring dedication to activism, education, and advocating on behalf of our youth.
By virtue of the authority vested in me as Chancellor of the University of Winnipeg, I admit you, Jane Goodall, to the degree of Doctor of Laws, honoris causa, with all the rights and privileges thereto pertaining. Sign that and you become the doctor.
Okay.
Well, now I'm suitably robed, capped, haltered, imprisoned by your university here. And it's a very great honor to me today to stand here and feel that I'm now part of a university that I truly respect because of its involvement with the First Nation, with the Indigenous people. Because for long I have had relationships with Indigenous people around the world. For long I have been shocked and horrified by the way that so often they have been and still are treated today. So I'm very grateful that in this university there is a real emphasis on bringing the First Nation into your classrooms and really trying to right some of the wrongs. I was given an orange shirt yesterday. I know about the residential schools. The orange shirt is actually, I left it back behind because it sort of clashes with red, but I do have one. I do understand what it's for. And you know, coming back into an academic setting, it makes me a little bit nostalgic for the days gone by when I used to analyze data. But also when I first went to university, it was Cambridge University in England, and my mentor, Lewis Leakey, told me I needed to get a degree because he would not be around forever to get money for me to continue my study with the chimpanzees. But in this letter that he wrote me when I was in the wilds of Gombe, it finally was delivered, and he said, "Jane, we don't have time for you to mess about with a BA. I've got you a place in Cambridge University to do a PhD in ethology." Well, I'd never been to college. I hadn't the faintest idea what ethology was. And of course, it's very simple. It's just the study of behavior, and in my case, animal behavior. I sometimes think scientists like to make difficult words because it makes the outside world respect them more. Because for many of the words that are rather difficult to comprehend, there's a much simpler way of saying it. And a big difference then, and you know, I love the way the Indigenous people talk about Mother Nature, how we are part of Mother Nature, and how all the animals, the birds, the fishes, and so forth are part of a great web of life. But when I went to Cambridge back in 1962, it was actually thought by the scientific community that there was a difference in kind between us and the rest of the animal kingdom. And I was told that I shouldn't have given the chimpanzees I was studying names. Numbers would be appropriate. And I shouldn't talk about them having personalities. I shouldn't talk about them having minds capable of solving problems. Absolutely not allowing that they might have emotions like happiness, sadness, fear, despair. I was guilty of the most terrible anthropomorphism, attributing human-like behavior to non-human animals. And fortunately, when I was a child, I'd had a wonderful teacher who taught me that in this respect, these erudite professors were certainly wrong. And that teacher was my dog, Rusty, because you can't share your life in a meaningful way with any kind of animal and not know, of course, they have personalities, minds, and feelings. Anyway, I got my degree. But just to give you a feeling of how different it was, back then, there were no computers. I did all my analysis of the Gombe chimpanzee data with slide rules, and I bet there's people in here and students today who have no idea what a slide rule is. I mean, how many of you know what a slide rule is? Well, that shows your age. But anyway, there were no computers, and it was such a different kind of world. But gradually we've changed, and gradually, as the Jane Goodall Institute was founded and has grown, we've been able to introduce all kinds of new scientific technology into our studies of the chimpanzees. And I think one of the most important things for me, and the reason really why I'm no longer at Gombe with the chimpanzees I came to know so well, and the kind of life that I love to live, those best days of my life. It was in 1986 at a conference where we brought together the people who by then were studying chimps in different parts of Africa and realized that chimp numbers were dropping, that forests were being destroyed, and realizing that I needed to try and do something about it. So from 1986, I haven't been more than 3 weeks consecutively in any one place. What made the biggest impact was when I went to Africa to find out more about the situation of the chimpanzees. I did, but I also learned about the crippling poverty, the hunger, the lack of education and health facilities for the people living in and around chimpanzee habitat. And when I flew over the tiny Gombe National Park and looked down on what had been part of a great equatorial forest belt stretching to the west coast of Africa, and I now look down upon a little island of forest surrounded by completely bare hills where more people lived than the land could support, where the land was over-farmed and infertile, and people were struggling to survive. And that's when I realized that if we don't help these people to have better lives, there's no way we can conserve the chimpanzees. And so that's when the Jane Goodall Institute began its program, Take Care or Takari, working to improve the lives of the villagers, not as a bunch of arrogant white people going into a poor African village and saying, well, you've made a mess of things, we're going to do this to make your lives better. No, it was a team of Tanzanians, carefully selected, who went to listen to the people and ask them, what do you think we can do to make your lives better? So that little program, which began with 12 villages around Gombe, is now in 52 villages in Tanzania, and we have similar programs in 6 other African countries, many of which the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada is involved in helping to fund. Well, all of this costs money. That took me traveling around the rest of the world. And as I was traveling around the rest of the world, I was learning more and more about what we humans are doing to the planet. We can look at chimpanzee behavior and see the many, many ways in which their behavior resembles ours: kissing, embracing, holding hands, showing love, compassion, true altruism, also violence, aggression, and a kind of primitive war. But the biggest difference, I believe, between them, our closest living relatives biologically, the biggest difference is this explosive development of our intellect. So is it not bizarre that the most intellectual species to ever walk this earth is destroying its only home? I know too much about that. And because I kept meeting young people, university students, high school students, who seemed to have lost hope in their future, and who told me, well, you've compromised our future and there's nothing we can do about it. That's why we feel hopeless, we feel angry, we feel depressed. And so that's when Roots and Shoots program began in 1991 with 12 high school students in Tanzania, with the main message: every single one of us makes an impact every single day with the little choices we make. What do we buy? What do we eat? What do we wear? And when billions of people make the right ethical choices, we can begin to move to a better kind of world. What began with those 12 high school students is now in 100 countries. We have members from kindergarten through university, and I know that a very strong and committed group of Roots and Shoots is going to start in this university. And it's university roots and shoots groups who are truly helping to change the world in many places. In China, for example, it's students from the different universities around China who are going into the primary schools, who are even going into kindergarten. And the number of people who come up to me in China and say, well, of course we care about the environment. We were in your Roots and Shoots program in primary school. Of course we care about animals. We watched your National Geographic movies in primary school. I've seen the attitude to nature and animals in that whole country gradually changing. And I didn't realize until recently that Roots and Shoots had played a prime role in that. So Roots and Shoots is about making things better for people, for animals, for the environment. It's about listening to young people. It's about encouraging them to follow their passions. And as a result, it's changing lives. Because if you're allowed to follow your passion and you're encouraged to think about what you would like to do to make the world better, then these young people are realizing the role that they can and must play. I think probably starting Roots and Shoots may be the best thing that I've ever done. And one of its aspects, which I think is truly important these days, is it's helping young people to break down the barriers that we build between people of different nations, different cultures, different religions. And we try to bring the young people together to help them understand that we may have different colored skin, we may wear different kinds of clothes, we may eat different things, we may have a different language, but if we cut ourselves, the blood is the same, and that's actually proved by science today. The DNA of humanity is the same. If we cry, our tears are the same. If we're amused and we laugh, our laughter is the same. And this is something that young people are learning, not just because we talk about it, but by experiencing people of their own age in other countries who share their passions. And so my last word will be, you're all wondering about Mr. H, I'm sure. Why do you see him in just about every picture? Why is he here now? Well, he symbolizes the indomitable human spirit. And that is so important as a reason for hope, the people who tackle impossible tasks and won't give up. And he was given to me by a man who went blind when he was 21, decided for some odd reason to become a magician, was told that's impossible, said, well, I can try. And he does shows for kids. They don't notice he's blind. And then he'll tell them and say, something might go wrong in your life because you never know. But if it does, don't give up. There's always a way forward. And he does skydiving. He's just taught himself to paint. He's done a book called Blind Artist. And he gave me Mr. H for my birthday 26 years ago, thinking he was giving me a stuffed chimpanzee, but I made him hold the tail. He said, never mind, take him where you go, and you know my spirit's with you. So he is a reminder to me. And the point that I like to make is each and every one of us has that same indomitable spirit. Some people don't realize they have an indomitable spirit. We need to encourage them to allow it to grow, to achieve their full human potential when head works in harmony with heart, and we have no barriers between people around the world and between us and Mother Nature. So finally, I repeat how honored I am to be here. And am I allowed to say that this is the day we signed an MOU between this university and the Jane Goodall Institute of Canada? So it's a very special day. Thank you all very much.
Dr. Goodall, you are an inspiration to us all. Every time I hear Dr. Goodall speak, I think she's only talking to me. And I would imagine that each and every one of you felt the same way. She talks about heart and mind, and she talks about really the same thing Elder Mary Corshane talked about, having a soft touch. And what I love most about Dr. Jane Goodall is she gives us hope, and she works with youth that have phenomenal passion and will make a difference. She mentioned we signed an MOU. We do want to maintain our relationship with you. We're so honored that you are part of our community. We have a fabulous education faculty. I'm looking at John at the back, and I know Mark Cooley and others are really keen to work with the Jane Goodall Institute on best practices with respect to sustainability education. We work with the best schools in Winnipeg, and I think our Winnipeg children are hungry to be part of Roots and Shoots. She's been at this a long time, and I don't know about the rest of you, but don't you hope when you're 83 you can have that same stamina? And I think the secret is to work on things you really love. So she's been at Roots and Shoots, I think, since 1977. That's actually what, 81?
91 Roots and Shoots, 77 the Jane Goodall Institute.
Okay, 77 Jane Goodall Institute, Roots and Shoots, 91. We will be looking for all sorts of opportunities to work together, to coordinate visiting speakers, conferences, and workshops. This university is strongly committed to sustainability, and I'm pleased that you referenced our interest in working with First Nations, Métis, Inuit communities, and our responsibility to do all we can to respond to the TRC calls to action. This is complicated, and we're learning as we go, and we are working with good intentions. I also want to congratulate Carlos. He was appointed as chair of the board of the directors of the JGI Institute of Canada. And we have, you have JGI institutes in, did you say 100 countries? Is Carlos your?
Roots and Shoots in 100.
Yeah.
JGI in 33.
33, okay, so Carlos is one of 33. Carlos is her favorite. I am sure of it. Yeah. So on behalf of everybody here, we really are so pleased to welcome you into our University of Winnipeg family, and we look forward to this long-standing partnership. Before we adjourn, I do want to say that I missed one of my favorites right behind me, Senator Mary Lou McPhedran, as part of our platform party. She's also an honorary degree recipient. And way back when, even before I got here, she was the first female president of the University of Winnipeg Students Association, and she's been, on that ever since, and she's making a real difference in Canada. So pleased to have you here today, and she's giving a TED Talk tonight, so always a pleasure to have her here. I also want to thank our Chief Marshal, Dr. Mark Vachon. It's a little easier to just get the platform party in the room, but we still messed up. But he manages to get thousands of students where they're supposed to be and does a fabulous job. Pianist and Reverend Tanis Kalisnik, who is an academic advisor extraordinary. Whenever I get a call from somebody that is trying to figure out their way, and usually these are people coming back for their second, third chance, she does marvelous things with them. Elder Mary Corshane, who had to leave a bit early to return to her school's Orange Shirt Day, honoring residential school survivors. If you haven't checked it out, if you're in Winnipeg for a little while, you should go to the Winnipeg Art Gallery to see the new exhibit, Insurgents, Resurgence. It's an incredible display of Indigenous art. And the Winnipeg Art Gallery is really committed to reconciliation, and I cannot believe the changes I've seen. And in part, they have a new young Indigenous curator who is actually the granddaughter of Elder Mary Corshane. And we also have a professor here in history, Dr. Julie Nagum, who's the second curator, and it's a fabulous show. I want to thank our sign language interpreter, Lacey Keller, and Jennifer Horvath. Today, Jane didn't speak in chimpanzee language. I'm not sure they would have caught that, but maybe before you go, you can, I think that would be a fitting way to end this. Our MC, Colin Russell, and our collegiate student who will be singing our national anthem, and our distinguished Chancellor, Mr. Robert Silver. And we do want to thank you for your leadership. And finally, to all of you guests for joining us on this wonderful occasion. So before we do the national anthem, is it okay if I put you on the spot? Would you come back and you won't be able to translate this. All right, Dr. Goodall, please come and share.
I don't need the mic.
You don't need the mic, that's right.
Me, Jane.
So, ladies and gentlemen, please rise for the national anthem, led by one of our collegiate students, Mariella Chanfloni, who will be accompanied by Reverend Tanis Kalisnik on the piano. And please remain in your seats until after the platform party has left. Thank you.